Yo, do you remember the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark movie? You probably don't. So let me tell you why. Because it is an extremely mid movie, but there's also another very famous horror book franchise, children's horror book franchise, that also got a movie. Multiple movies actually, and that is Goosebumps. Now, today we're going to be talking about just the movies, not the books. Now, if you want to know my thoughts on the books, like and comment, and yeah, if enough people want to hear my thoughts on that, I'll tell you my thoughts on which books I think are better. But overall, for the movies, they kind of have the same exact plot, except R.L. Stine created books that bring his monsters to life, while in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, it's a witch that writes stories for people, and the monsters come to life to kill them. Now, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is obviously a much darker film, trying to actually be scary as a PG-13 movie can be. It fails in being scary and funny, which it does try to do both multiple times. It honestly just fails because the characters are a little bit boring, a little bit lackluster, and none of them are extremely funny or interesting. It also has a weird subplot about a kid who is draft dodging for the Vietnam War, but it ends with him going back to the Vietnam War. I don't know what was up with that. And it also has huge sequel bait with the daughter, the father, and the sister that had nothing to do in the movie other than have spiders explode out of her face, going off to try and figure out how to save the brothers. Will we ever get a sequel? No, probably not. There has been a a script and everything for the second one for since 2020, but yeah, I don't think we're getting that, buddies. But Goosebumps is also a movie that has a really good like father-daughter dynamic where R.L. Stine actually wrote his daughter into existence because he was just lonely. He all of his monsters are tied to him directly. Slappy is a very good villain, a lot better than the witch in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and yeah, the kid from 13 Reasons Why is in it. I like that actor. I think he's pretty cool. All of the monster designs are done really well, but all of the monster designs are done very well in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark as well. So honestly, what we have to look at is the characters because the monster designs are perfect for the both of the universes that is set within. Harold, the Pale Woman, and the Toeless Ghost all look absolutely amazing. The witch, I don't think we ever get a clear look at the witch, but it's adequately creepy. It never gets into like the really scary territory, but it definitely has creepy, unnerving scenes like the Pale Lady uh, like sucking the brother into her stomach because she's a weirdo. I love all of that. All of the effects for the monsters and everything look great, except for a scene where the kid turns into the scarecrow. That CG does not look very good at all. But overall, it is a good mid movie. It's the type of movie that you would show your kid and then they would forget about and you would forget about very quickly. But Goosebumps, on the other hand, it was good enough to get an actual sequel, which I can't remember the sequel at all, to be completely honest. But the first one is very good. It is, I don't know, it just has everything I wanted from a Goosebumps movie. It had the Yeti, it had Slappy, it had the Venus flytrap, it had the giant mantis, it had basically everything. It had the vampire poodle. It had so many different monsters, and then I do remember the sequel brought in even more monsters. Like it did really good. It was a really good movie, and the comedic factor that they had was some kid, the friend, and he was actually pretty funny. I remember him making me laugh a few times, which is a pretty low bar, but it's higher than Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the brother in that ever did, and he was specifically there for comic relief. So yeah, the Goosebumps movie, I would honestly give the Goosebumps movie like a 7.5 out of 10, but Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, I have always thought that it was like, I don't, it was like a 5.5, 6 out of 10 maybe. It's just so forgettable and mid except for the creature designs. Like I could explain to you how Harold and the Pale Lady and the Toeless Ghost looked like all the way through it, but I could not tell you one thing about the characters except that one kid didn't want to go to Vietnam. The daughter was sad about her mother leaving her, and the nerd one was a nerd. Yep, that's basically it. And the dad is played by the dude from Under the Dome and uh, Breaking Bad. And speaking of actors, there are more like larger name actors in Goosebumps, which makes sense. There were a lot more random kid actors in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, but yeah, you had Jack Black, which was a pretty big name. Like he's always been a big name, so I mean, yeah. And then you had the kid from 13 Reasons Why, and that's basically the only two I know. But it's two more. It's one more that I know from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It still surprises me the guy who plays the dad in Scary Stories Still in the Dark is the guy who plays the dad, just because I always thought he was a really big name actor, and seeing him in a movie that's that mid just kind of makes me extremely sad. So yeah, Goosebumps beats Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark like categorically in every single thing. Like the storytelling is a lot better in Goosebumps. The relationship between the daughter and father, which is something the Scary Stories from the Tell in the Dark tried to do, is much better in Goosebumps. The relationship between the two like lead actors, like the 13 Reasons Why guy and the daughter, like their like blossoming relationship is a lot better in Goosebumps because it, they tried to do that in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, but it didn't go anywhere with the Vietnam guy and the girl. Yeah, there's everything about Goosebumps is kind of better except the CG. And even then, I'd say it's better because all of the CG in this looks better than the one time they tried to do CG in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which is the Scarecrow. So yeah, I think they have that over it too. Yeah, it's just Goosebumps. Yeah, I wanted to do this video just because these are two of my favorite children's like book franchises. Whenever it comes to like the books like Goosebumps and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, whenever people are like, "Oh, my kid wants to read horror. What should I get them?" Those are the two everyone jumps to. But these movies could not be more different in like quality. Which I mean, obviously, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was going for a more darker, more slightly grown up type of vibe, while Goosebumps was going for a more fantasy, a little bit of scariness, I guess, just because of how insane Slappy is. Yet again, Slappy is an amazing villain. I just want that to be known right now. He's one of the best parts of these movies. Yeah, Goosebumps. Whenever the movie came out with a monster guide, like specifically for the movie, and I bought it. Like this movie was so good to me as a kid. As a kid, whenever I first saw it, I would have said it was like a 9 out of 10. Now I see it's closer to a 7.5 out of 10. But yeah, Goosebumps wins 100%. There's nothing like there's not even a really good way to compare these two, just because the acting is better in Goosebumps, the story is leagues ahead of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the the very few scares that they try to do are more effective than Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark just isn't very effective. They have very good scenes, like the toeless ghost dragging the nerd under the bed into a different realm. That was cool. The Pale Lady, that entire sequence was the best part of the movie, and everything else was kind of just mid. Like the characters, I didn't care about any of them. It's just, man, Goosebumps is such a good movie. I kind of just wanted to make this video just because I love the Goosebumps movie, but I didn't mean for it to get this long. So yeah, I don't know.